Brigadier Niks Vaits Boikots, Chief of Staff of Standing Joint Force Headquarters. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Evia.
As all we know, Russia has been waging aggressive war against Ukraine already for 19 months. What changes did it bring to the internal procedures of Joint Expeditionary Force?
So one of the first things that we did as a Joint Expeditionary Force is we were directed to form an operational coordination centre within our headquarters so that we could better coordinate activities of the Joint Expeditionary Force, which meant that we would be able to reassure the participant nations that there was a plan, and that we would be able to change our posture so that there could be a deterrence message to Russia that the members of the Joint Expeditionary Force took their aggressive acts very seriously, and we did not want the same thing to happen in our area of interest.
Of course. And NATO is strengthening its policy of deterrence, but time will remain a decisive factor in the defense of the Baltic states, as we all know. Does the JEF plan to further reduce response time for unforeseen attacks and also foreseen attacks?
So I think where the JEF and the Joint Expeditionary Force really comes in is where it's in the, if there are three phases, competition, crisis and conflict, we really look and focus on the competing area and the crisis. So it's the sub-threshold before anything gets to Article 5. We want to be able to change how we would react, so we provide time to the Baltic states. So for instance, how we could do that is through what we were terming as JEF response options, that we would be able to enact in times of crisis that would alter what any adversary would think about. If they were thinking about doing an aggressive act, we would be seeking to change their mind on how they would do that.
Mm-hmm. And as Ukraine experience shows, issues within NATO, including the supply of armaments, can take a long time of the process of acceptance, which is a normal part of democracy, as we all know. How do you see the role of JEF in repelling potential conventional or unconventional attacks? And do you think JEF's role become more significant in the light of political and bureaucratic challenges inside NATO?
So I think, the JEF, it came out of NATO, and all of the member states within the JEF are part of NATO. But what it gives NATO and our nations is another response option. So if I look at my own country, the United Kingdom, in our integrated review, which is our defence and national security strategy of 2020, the Joint Expeditionary Force is mentioned 3 times. In our most recent refresh, which was published in March, it's mentioned 13 times, with a specific focus on the Baltic Sea, the North Atlantic and the High North. So we can see that the leadership of our countries and our Chiefs of Defence Staff are also meeting on a far more frequent basis to discuss issues of mutual concern. So I think by that shared understanding and looking at and shared threats, we start to generate more political will at the top level, but certainly for us at the operational level, we have a much better understanding of how we can react or be more proactive below the threshold of conflict, in hybrid war, to solve or to help to solve the problems and the challenges that we face. And really what we as a headquarters can bring to it is convening power, because we can speak to all 10 nations, but it's not just within the military. We understand how to speak across government, to access other parts of those governments, to bring them into a conversation for our collective defence.
And to what extent does JEF cooperate or plan to cooperate to support Ukraine?
So at the moment, we are staying as a JEF very much focused on the Baltic, the High North, North Atlantic, but all of the JEF nations individually are supporting Ukraine, be that through weapons, through training and other means. And if I look again back to the United Kingdom, we've got Operation Interflex, which is the training of the Ukrainian army in the UK. But there are many JEF nations that are participating in that training, but it is not a specific Joint Expeditionary Force activity. So really, we're looking at it, we're not doing anything as a 10-country grouping, but all of our countries are coming together under other mechanisms to support Ukraine.
So more Baltic states defense, you would say?
Yeah. So we're very much, where we can add value, and we've got, as part of NATO's enhanced forward presence, we've got a battle group in Estonia, And that's where our kind of focus areas lie. But we are, as you know, and everybody knows, the UK has been one of the biggest donors to support for weapons and material to Ukraine.
Yeah. And how can JEF complement NATO?
So JEF can complement NATO by understanding what the NATO plans are, and by understanding those plans, especially before Article 5, so that sub-threshold activity, where we can provide options that NATO might not be able to through the requirement for consensus. And one of the strengths of the JEF is that you don't need consensus between all nations. It just needs 2 nations to agree to do something. And that doesn't need to be the United Kingdom plus 1. It could be Estonia and Latvia agree to do something together. And so that consensus means we've got more agility and flexibility, but that complements any NATO response options. It's not instead of NATO, it's in support of NATO.
Mm-hmm. And how does Great Britain perceive the threats posed by Russia now?
So we view Russia as a threat to the UK, and the defence of the UK starts in Europe, and it starts on the borders of NATO, and so that's why we are so invested in NATO as a leading European member of NATO, and we are committed to the JEF as part of that, because that collective defence means that we can protect our country from any adversary, but we seek to do it in partnership. NATO, Joint Expeditionary Force are all levers that we have to provide that collective security and national security.
Mm-hmm. And Sweden is expected to become a NATO member soon. What will this mean for the format of JEF?
So all of the formats within the Joint Expeditionary Force are NATO standard, but what it means with Sweden formally joining NATO is that information sharing, intelligence sharing and standardization becomes easier for us, because we've had to construct mechanisms which are NATO plus Sweden and latterly plus Finland. But the other bit to remember about what the JEF framework has given is after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the United Kingdom was able to sign agreements with both Finland and Sweden as it started the assessment process to join NATO that further enhanced the security of those 2 countries. And we're very pleased that they've joined NATO, because that enhances the JEF, enhances regional security in the Baltic, the High North and the North Atlantic.
Yes, of course. And why would you say it is important for Great Britain to be part of security architecture in Baltic states?
So our defence starts as far forward as possible, which is on the boundaries of NATO. We're a North European country. We share common interests and values with the Baltic countries, and we've been involved in this region for quite some time. I think back to Latvian, Lithuanian, Estonian independence, sort of 1918, 1919. We were active contributors then, as we are active contributors now, to protecting that freedom.
Yeah, and what role does JEF play in Britain's deterrence and defence strategy vis-à-vis Russia, and is it leading or more complementary? So
JEF is increasingly important for how the UK designs its security, and we can see that, as I said earlier, the more frequent mentions of the Joint Expeditionary Force, and to be able to work on shared interests, shared challenges with like-minded partners in a non-consensus format means that we can solve our security problems, which are also shared security problems for other Northern European nations.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Mr. Niks Vaits Boikots. It was a great honor to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. It was lovely to be able to come to Latvia and see your country, and to be able to talk this morning.
Thank you very much.